My great-aunt Eleanor was a force of nature, sharp as a tack, with a wit that could cut glass. She'd built a small fortune from nothing. I loved her dearly, and we spent countless hours together, sharing stories over tea. My cousin, Veronica, however, saw Aunt Eleanor as a walk-in, talking bank account. Veronica's visits were rare, always brief, and usually ended with a request for a small loan. Aunt Eleanor passed away peacefully at 93. The grief was immense, but Veronica's behavior was unsettling. She immediately started acting like the lady of the manor, planning renovations and talking about selling off antiques. I knew Aunt Eleanor was smarter than to leave everything to someone so grasping, but Veronica seemed unnervingly confident. The day of the will reading arrived. We all gathered in the lawyer's stuffy office, me, Veronica, and a few distant relatives. Veronica sat primly, a smug little smile playing on her lips. She kept shooting me condescending looks, as if I were a charity case about to be shown the door. The lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, cleared his throat and began to read. He read through the usual legal jargon, and then he got to the main To my beloved great-niece, Veronica Sterling, he read, I bequeath my entire estate, including all property, investments, and personal effects. Veronica let out a triumphant gasp. She turned to me, her eyes glittering with malice. It's all mine, she whispered, her voice dripping with venom. Every last penny. Maybe I'll let you keep a teaspoon as a souvenir. I just sat there, my heart pounding, the other relatives murmured in shock. Veronica was already on her phone, likely telling her friends about her newfound wealth. Mr. Abernathy paused, a slight frown on his face as he watched her display. He let her have her moment before clearing his throat again, much louder this time. If I may continue, he said, his voice firm. Veronica waved a dismissive hand at him, too busy gloating. There is a codicil, Mr. Abernathy announced. The room went silent. Veronica froze her phone halfway to her ear. A what? She snapped. A codicil, he repeated, an amendment to the will, dated 6 months after the original document was signed. It was delivered to my office by Eleanor herself. He pulled out another, smaller envelope. The seal was unbroken. Veronica's face had gone from smug to pale. What does it say? She demanded. Mr. Abernathy carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. He read, This codicil hereby revokes the previously stated primary bequest. He paused, looking directly at Veronica, whose jaw had dropped. The will continues. It has come to my attention that my great-niece Veronica's affection for me is directly proportional to my net worth. I have therefore decided to conduct a small test. My own heart was racing now. What had Aunt Eleanor done? Mr. Abernathy continued reading from Aunt Eleanor's own words. The will you just heard read is a decoy, a performance piece, if you will. I instructed my lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, to read it first, simply to observe Veronica's reaction. I trust it was as theatrical as I imagined. Veronica looked like she'd been slapped. She was sputtering. This is illegal. It's a trick. It's perfectly legal, Miss Sterling. Mr. Abernathy said calmly, Your great-aunt was very thorough. Now, for the actual asterisk last will and testament, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a much thicker, more official-looking document. It was bound in blue, whereas the first one had been red. But what about Veronica stammered. The codicil's only purpose was to invalidate the decoy will, he explained patiently. This document here is the true and final one. He began to read. It was completely different. There was specific bequests to her favorite charities, small but meaningful gifts to distant relatives who had shown her kindness, and a generous fund set up for her loyal housekeeper of 30 years. Veronica was shaking her head in disbelief. What about me? There has to be something for me. Mr. Abernathy scanned the page. Ah, yes. Here you are. To my great-niece Veronica, I leave the sum of $100 for the purpose of buying a book on etiquette. It is my sincere hope she reads it. He then added, and I also bequeath to her all of my outstanding debts and IOUs that she has accumulated over the years, which, by my calculation, she can repay with her $100 inheritance and still owe my estate a considerable sum. A choked sound escaped Veronica's throat. She looked utterly humiliated. All her dreams of grandeur had evaporated in an instant. Then came the final part. Mr. Abernathy looked up, a genuine smile gracing his features for the first time. And finally, he announced, "To my darling great-niece. He looked right at me, who never asked me for a thing but gave me everything that mattered: her time, her laughter, and her unconditional love. I leave the entire remainder of my estate. Use it well, my dear. Build a life as full of joy as you have made mine." Tears streamed down my face, not for the money, but for the final, beautiful words from the woman I adored. It was her last, perfect message to me. Veronica stormed out of the office, muttering about lawsuits and cheats, but her threats were empty. Aunt Eleanor had seen everything. She had known who truly loved her and who was just waiting for her to be gone. And in the end, she made sure that love, not greed, had the final say. It wasn't about the inheritance, it was about honor. And I plan to honor her memory every single day. Thanks for listening to my story. If you have a story about family justice, I'd love to read it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you next time.